Everyone thought Talia Wren wanted respect. That was the easy story. She was 26, quiet, and too young for the orange badge clipped to her chest. She had arrived on the Odyssey with sealed credentials, a restricted assignment history, and a commander who refused to explain why a junior airlock technician had been added to the crew so late. People filled in the silence themselves. A favor, a family connection, a protected seat. By the time the ship reached its orbital construction window, Talia no longer had to make mistakes to be doubted. She only had to speak. So, when she warned Gavin Rourke that the outer airlock latch was answering late, no one heard a technician reading a system correctly. They heard a woman trying to justify her place. Gavin understood the value of that misunderstanding immediately. "Log it as non-critical," he said, loud enough for the EVA crew to hear. "We are not delaying a mission window because someone wants her badge to matter." Talia felt the words hit. Not because they were new, because they were working. Mason Vale avoided her eyes. Riley Chen smiled into his helmet. Nora Pike, at the secondary console, looked like she wanted to say something and then chose not to. Talia looked at the airlock door. She knew that delay pattern. She had seen it once before, in a ground simulation that had ended with a locked chamber, a failed override, and a report sealed so tightly that even most of the crew did not know it existed. That was the truth Gavin was counting on. Talia could not explain why she knew, not without exposing what the mission had hidden before launch. So the crew laughed. The EVA began. And when the airlock trapped half of them outside the ship, they finally understood the worst part. Talia had not been asking for respect. She had been asking for time. 4 hours earlier, Talia was alone in maintenance spine C, with her shoulder pressed against a cold pipe and a diagnostic wand between her teeth. The Odyssey never slept, but the maintenance spine had its own quieter language: valve size, coolant rushing behind insulated walls, tiny clicks that told her which systems were healthy. Talia trusted those sounds more than most people on the ship. She tightened the last coupling on an auxiliary pressure line and watched the reading settle into range. The repair had taken 8 minutes. The request had been open for 2 days because it was not considered mission critical. It would never appear in a briefing. That was fine. A message flashed on her wrist display. Pre-EVA Systems Review 13-20, authorized personnel only. Her name was not on the access list. Airlock and external systems were her assignment. If a crew member crossed from ship pressure to vacuum, part of that safety chain belonged to her. Yet Gavin had removed her from the final review without saying a word. She opened the authorization record. Removed by G. Rourke. Reason: role overlap. Role overlap. That was what Gavin called it when he did not want her in the room. Before launch, she had been taught that spacecraft did not care about pride. A latch either sealed or it did not. A pressure cycle either balanced or it failed. Numbers did not know who signed your recommendation. But people cared. By the end of week 1, no one needed to explain the joke. They only had to glance at the badge. EVA Systems Technician. Orange background, black letters, thin strip of embedded ID foil. Talia had earned that badge in a windowless training facility outside Houston, where she rebuilt airlock mock-ups until her fingers cracked under the gloves. She had written a 17-page anomaly report no one on the Odyssey was supposed to mention. She had watched a simulation chamber lock itself with 2 trainees inside and had been the only technician in the room who noticed the latch was not failing randomly. It was answering late. 0.8 seconds. That delay had followed her into space like a ghost. Talia. Commander Elise Hart's voice came from behind her. Talia turned quickly. Commander. Elise was in her early 40s, tall, contained, and difficult to read. "Why aren't you in the pre-EVA review?" Elise asked. "I was removed from the list." "By Rourke?" "Yes, Commander." "Did he give a technical reason?" "Role overlap." Elise did not defend Gavin. She also did not defend Talia. That was what made the rumors survive. Elise had signed Talia's late addition to the crew, but she had never explained it or denied the whispers in front of the others. "Do you have any current concerns?" Elise asked. Talia looked toward the EVA sector. The safest answer was no. It would keep the line clean and let the mission proceed without another scene where the young technician sounded like she was begging to be taken seriously. But the safest answer for Talia was not the safest answer for the crew. "I saw a delayed response on outer latch 2 during the last pressure cycle," she said. 0.84 seconds. "It cleared on the dashboard, but the timing is wrong. Did you log it?" "Yes." "Did Rourke review it?" "He marked the related warning non-critical." "Do you agree?" "No." The word came out before fear could soften it. Elise studied her. "Bring me the log after the briefing." After the briefing, Talia knew what that meant. Gavin would present the system as clean. The EVA window would remain untouched unless something large enough to embarrass the schedule appeared on an official screen. "Commander," Talia said, with respect, "after the briefing may be too late to request another full cycle." Elise's face tightened only a fraction. "Do you have enough to stop the walk?" Enough. That word had followed her for years. Enough proof. Enough rank. Enough permission to say what her hands and eyes already knew. "I have enough to be worried," she said. "That is not what I asked." "No," Talia said quietly. "I don't have enough to override a senior EVA officer." Elise gave a single nod. "Then get enough." She walked toward the command lift. Talia held those 3 words, like a tool she had not yet learned how to use. Get enough. Not be liked. Not be rescued from the rumor. She headed for the nearest systems terminal. The EVA preparation bay was already alive behind its glass partition. Mason Vale checked the seal on his left glove. Riley Chen rotated his helmet under one arm, grinning at something Gavin said. Nora Pike stood at the secondary console with a tablet clutched too tightly against her ribs. Gavin occupied the center of the room as if the air belonged to him. Talia stayed outside the door and opened the live airlock telemetry. If Gavin had removed her from the briefing, he had not removed her from basic monitoring. Not yet. She pulled the last 3 pressure cycles. Cycle 1, clean. Cycle 2, minor delay. Cycle 3, outer latch response late by 0.84 seconds. Then she opened the firmware status. A memo sat at the bottom of the stack. Airlock subsystem patch 7, 3B, review required before external operations. Status, reviewed. Reviewer, G. Rourke. Talia clicked into the detail field. The patch had not been applied. Inside the bay, Gavin lifted his voice. Airlock shows green across the board. Eva proceeds at 1400. Nora looked toward the glass, where Talia stood with the telemetry glowing across her face. Their eyes met. For 1 second, Nora looked frightened. Then Gavin turned his head slightly, and Nora looked away. Talia saved the firmware screen. She saved the latch delay. She saved the timestamp of Gavin's review. Her hand was steady now, but not because she felt calm. Because some part of her had already understood what Gavin was doing. He was not ignoring a warning. He was building a record where the warning had never mattered. Talia stepped through the bay door. The voices dropped into a tension sharpened by dislike. Gavin turned slowly. "You're not assigned to this review," he said. "No," Talia answered. "I'm assigned to the system you're about to cycle." Riley let out a short laugh. Mason looked down at his glove. Talia kept her eyes on Gavin, though every instinct told her to soften, explain, apologize for taking up space. "Not this time. The patch marked reviewed has not been applied," she said. "Outer latch 2 is responding late. Run another pressure cycle before you open the hatch." Gavin smiled as if she had handed him exactly what he wanted. "Log it as non-critical," he said. And that was when the orange badge on Talia's chest seemed to grow heavier than the suit door behind him. Gavin did not wait for Talia to answer. He turned back to the EVA crew and tapped 2 fingers against the main display. The warning line beside outer latch 2 changed from amber to pale gray. Non-critical observation. The phrase looked clean. Professional, harmless. That was what made it dangerous. Proceeding with final suit checks, Gavin said. No one challenged him. Riley lowered his helmet over his head. Mason finished sealing his glove but kept glancing at the airlock display. Nora Pike stood at the secondary console with her tablet against her chest, her thumb frozen at the edge of the screen. Talia saw the movement. Nora had seen the warning before Gavin downgraded it. Run the pressure cycle again, Talia said. It takes 90 seconds. Gavin faced her fully. And costs us the EVA window if it cascades into review, he replied. We are not grounding 3 trained crew members because you discovered a decimal. It is not the decimal. It is the pattern. The pattern, Riley repeated through his suit comm. That sounds serious. A small laugh moved through the bay, weaker this time, but still enough to do damage. Gavin did not laugh. He never wasted cruelty when authority worked better. He opened the pre-EVA checklist. Airlock, pressure, balance? Green, Nora said. Outer hatch seal. Green. Latch response. Nora hesitated. Talia watched her eyes move to the gray warning line. Gavin's head turned slightly. Nora swallowed. Within operational tolerance. Talia felt something cold settle under her ribs. Within operational tolerance was not a lie, not exactly. The system had accepted the delay because the threshold had been written for normal wear, not for a latch answering out of sequence before vacuum exposure. That was how bad records were born. Not through one dramatic falsehood, but through careful words that left out the part that mattered. Gavin checked the final box. Eva remains on schedule. Talia stepped closer to the side terminal. Then I am adding a formal objection. The bay changed in small ways. Riley stopped adjusting his helmet. Mason looked up. Nora's grip tightened on the tablet. Gavin's expression did not move. You are not listed as review authority for this operation. I am listed as airlock technician, and your observation has been logged as non-critical without a secondary cycle, because that is the correct classification. Then attach my note to the mission record. For the first time, Gavin paused long enough for the request to land. A formal objection would not stop the EVA by itself, but it would put Talia's warning into the official chain before the hatch opened. It would force anyone reading the record later to see that someone had raised the issue in time. Gavin knew that. So did Nora. Gavin leaned toward the console. Submit it after the walk. We will not clutter the live procedure with duplicate anxiety. Duplicate anxiety. The words sounded administrative and cruel at once. Mason's eyes flicked to her badge. Talia saw the old story forming again. Not data. Not timing. A young woman making herself difficult because the ship had not applauded her. She opened her wrist display and tried to submit the objection manually. Access limited during active EVA prep. Authorized by G. Rourke. There it was. Not a debate. A wall. From the command lift, Commander Elise's voice cut through the bay.com. Status? Gavin answered before anyone else could. Final checks complete. Minor airlock note reviewed and classified. No mission impact. Talia looked at Nora. Nora looked back at the gray line on her screen. For one breath, it seemed she might speak. Then Gavin said, "Confirm, Pike." Nora closed her eyes once. "Confirmed," she said. The countdown on the wall reached 13 minutes. Gavin gave the order to move the EVA crew into position. Talia saved a private copy of the blocked objection, the downgraded warning, and the firmware memo marked reviewed but unapplied. If Gavin wanted the official record clean, she would keep the dirty one. Outside the bay window, the airlock lights shifted from white to blue. Pre-cycle armed. Talia looked at the door and heard the old simulation in her memory. The delayed latch, the trapped chamber, the instructor saying the failure had been contained. Contained did not mean solved. It only meant buried. And now, with 3 people about to step into open space, the buried thing was answering late again. The EVA bay narrowed around Talia as the pre-cycle lights turned blue. On the far wall, the countdown slipped under 10 minutes. Gavin moved the crew with practiced efficiency. Riley stepped onto the restraint platform. Mason clipped his tether to the rail. Doctor, Soren Vale checked the medical sensor pack fixed to his suit and gave a tight nod through his visor. Everything looked controlled. That was what frightened Talia most. Comms check, Gavin said. One by one, the EVA crew answered. Riley Chen, clear. Mason Vale, clear. Soren Vale, clear. Nora's voice followed from the secondary station. Internal loop recording. Talia looked at her. Nora did not look back, but her finger hovered above the comm panel a second longer than needed. Recording. The word landed in Talia's mind like a handhold. Gavin turned toward the airlock. Outer hatch sequence remains nominal. No, Talia said. This time, she did not speak from the side terminal. She stepped into the center lane of the bay. The blue light cut across her orange badge. Stop the sequence and run another pressure cycle. Riley made a sound inside his helmet. You have got to be kidding. I am not. Gavin folded his arms. We already reviewed this. You classified it. That is not the same as reviewing it. Mason's eyes moved from Gavin to Talia. Talia raised her wrist display and sent the delay graph to the bay monitor before Gavin could block the local screen. 3 cycles appeared above the airlock schematic, 1 growing delay, outer latch 2 answering late. 0.84 seconds. There, she said. It is repeating. For a moment, no one joked. Then Riley leaned closer to the display. That, he said. That is your emergency? It becomes an emergency when the latch has to confirm under vacuum. Gavin's voice dropped. Enough. Talia did not lower her hand. The firmware patch has not been applied. The patch is advisory. It is marked review required before external operations. And reviewed. Not applied. The words struck harder than she intended. Gavin's jaw shifted once. It was the first visible sign that she had touched something real. Then he recovered. This is exactly why chain of command exists, he said to the room. A junior technician sees an advisory memo, lacks the context to weigh risk, and turns a scheduled operation into a stage. Riley's shoulders relaxed. That was how fast Gavin could hand people permission to dismiss her. A stage, Riley repeated. He tapped the side of his helmet toward Talia's badge. Want us to wave at your sponsor while we're outside? A few laughs came through the open loop, thin and metallic through suit speakers. Talia felt heat rise into her face. She hated that part most, the way her body betrayed her even when her voice did not. Mason did not laugh this time. He looked at the graph again. Mason, Gavin said. The warning was gentle. Mason looked away. Ready for hatch entry. Gavin smiled faintly, not with amusement, but with satisfaction. Talia knew then that he had won the room again. But she also knew the room was still being recorded. So she made herself speak clearly. For the mission record, I am stating that outer latch 2 is answering late by 0.84 seconds across repeated cycles. Firmware patch 7.3b has not been applied, and I recommend delaying EVA until a full pressure recycle is complete. Gavin stepped close enough that the others could still hear, but only barely. You keep confusing fear with expertise, he said. No, Talia answered. You keep confusing rank with proof. Nora inhaled sharply at the console. Gavin's eyes cooled. Remove Technician Wren from active EVA prep. No security officer came. There was no need. The order itself did the work. Talia was not thrown out. That would have looked ugly in the record. She was simply made irrelevant. Gavin cleared her graph from the main display and restored the checklist. The amber trace disappeared. Green boxes returned one after another. Final hatch entry, he said. Riley stepped into the airlock first. Soren followed. Mason paused at the threshold. His gaze moved once to Talia. Not apology. Not courage. Just doubt arriving too late to matter. Then he stepped inside. The inner door sealed. Talia stood beyond the glass as the pressure began to fall. Nora's fingers remained near the comm panel. At 1400 ship time, the outer hatch opened. One by one, the EVA crew moved into the black, their helmet lights becoming small white stars against the hull. The airlock accepted their exit without complaint. That was why people relaxed. Talia did not. She watched the latch response on her private display as the system reset behind them. 0.87 seconds. 0.91. 0.94. The lock was still answering late. Only now, half the crew was on the wrong side of the door. The Odyssey looked peaceful from the outside. On the hull cameras, the 3 EVA crew members moved along the silver spine of the ship like slow sparks. Their helmet lights passed over solar brackets, antenna struts, and the half-built docking frame. Inside, Talia watched the airlock telemetry refuse to settle. Outer latch 2, delayed. Outer latch 2, delayed. Outer latch 2, delayed. Each cycle returned green because the system still received an answer, but timing mattered. A heart could still beat and be dying. A latch could still answer and be failing. Gavin's voice came over the internal channel. "EVA team, proceed to frame 7. Copy," Riley answered. Mason's signal followed. "Tether secure." Talia kept her eyes on the numbers. If she interrupted again without more proof, Gavin would bury her under procedure before she finished the first sentence. Commander Elise had told her to get enough. Enough would not come from fear. It had to come from the ship. She opened a side terminal and pulled the live cycle against archived failure patterns. Access denied. Senior clearance required. Talia exhaled slowly. Of course. The old simulation report had been sealed before launch. Not because it was useless. Because it was embarrassing. A mission sold to the world as ready had nearly failed inside a training chamber before it ever left Earth. 2 trainees had been locked in the mock airlock for 7 minutes. No one had died. That was the official comfort. But Talia remembered the instructors shouting over the comm. She remembered standing behind a diagnostic table, 23 years old, watching the delay repeat before anyone higher ranked believed it was a pattern. 0.8 seconds. Then 0.9. Then the system declared itself safe and trapped the chamber anyway. She could not open the sealed file, but she did not need the whole report. She needed the checksum. Talia typed an old identifier from memory. Simeva latch Delta Fira 130 The terminal refused it. She tried the secondary archive route, the one used for training comparisons instead of investigation records. The screen flickered. Partial metadata available. Her pulse hit once, hard. No diagrams. No names, no conclusion. But there were timing signatures. She dragged the current latch response into the comparison field. Pattern correlation, 91.6%. Talia stared at the number. That was not enough to convict Gavin. It was enough to stop a hatch. "Nora," she said softly. The junior analyst looked up from the secondary station. Gavin stood near the main .hom, talking Mason through a bracket inspection. Talia sent the comparison to Nora's tablet. Nora's face changed before she could hide it. "You have seen that before?" Talia asked. Nora did not answer. That was an answer. The firmware patch was tied to this simulation failure, wasn't it? Nora glanced toward Gavin. "He told us it was a stability update," she whispered. "Who told you?" "Rourke. Before launch. He said the patch could wait until after orbital construction because applying it would trigger a full safety review." A tool slipped in Talia's hand, though she had not realized she was holding it. There it was. Not a mistake. A choice. On the EVA feed, Mason's breathing grew louder as he leaned over the docking frame. "Getting resistance on the tether rail," he said. Gavin answered smoothly. "Adjust your angle. You are fine." Talia checked the airlock again. Outer latch 2, delayed. Then a new line appeared beneath it. Secondary latch, confirmation, incomplete. The ship did not sound an alarm. Not yet. Because the system still believed the fault was minor. Talia saved the metadata match, Nora's received timestamp, and the incomplete confirmation line. Then she opened a direct message to Commander Elise. Urgent. Current airlock delay matches sealed ground sim failure at 91.6%. Firmware patch 7. 3B, not applied. Secondary latch confirmation now incomplete. Recommend immediate EVA recall. She sent it. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the command channel opened. Elise's voice was calm enough to frighten everyone who knew her. Rourke, hold exterior tasking. Bring EVA crew back to the airlock. Gavin turned from the comm panel. His eyes found Talia across the bay. This time, he did not smile. Commander, he said, that is unnecessary. Outside, Mason's suit camera swung toward the ship, and on Talia's display, outer latch 2 missed its next response entirely. Commander Elise repeated the order. Recall Eva, now. Gavin kept his hand above the comm panel for half a second too long. That pause was small enough for him to deny later and large enough for Talia to see. Eva team, Gavin said at last, return to airlock. We are running a verification cycle. Riley's voice crackled back first. Because of her? Return to airlock, Elise said. That ended the question. On the hull feed, the 3 suits turned from the docking frame and moved along the tether line. Mason traveled slower than Riley. His camera kept dipping toward Earth below them. Talia watched the airlock status. Outer latch 2, no response. Secondary latch confirmation, incomplete. Pressure, logic, pending. The system had not failed loudly enough for the ship to scream. It was doing something worse. It was waiting for the next command to expose the contradiction. Nora stood beside the secondary console, pale. Talia, she whispered, if they request entry and the latch state is unresolved, the system may reject both doors, Talia said. Gavin heard her. Speculation does not help. Then stop asking the ship to pretend it knows where the door is. Riley reached the outer handrail first. At the hatch, he said. Requesting cycle. Gavin moved before Talia could stop him. Initiating return sequence. No, Talia said. Do not. He pressed the command. For 1 clean second, nothing happened. Then every light around the airlock frame turned red. Outer latch state unknown. Pressure transfer denied. Riley cursed inside his helmet. Mason's camera jerked upward. What does that mean? Soren's medical pack began feeding faster numbers across the monitor. Heart rate climbing. Oxygen draw rising. Gavin stared at the panel as if the display had betrayed him. Reset the latch state, Elise ordered. He entered the standard reset. The system refused it. Command rejected. Active occupancy risk. For the first time since Talia had known him, Gavin looked at a screen and did not seem to know what to say. How long do we have? Elise asked. Nora checked the suit telemetry. Primary EVA supply is stable, but return reserve is limited. Mason is burning faster. Because of stress. Number. Nora swallowed. 18 minutes before reserve margin is unsafe, less if his breathing keeps climbing. The bay lost its shape around that number. 18 minutes. Not enough for a full system reboot. Not enough for mission control to answer. Not enough for Pride to finish its performance. Talia stepped to the main console. Gavin blocked her with his body. No. Move. You are the last person who touched this chain. I was locked out of active control. You pushed unauthorized data to the monitor and disrupted procedure. Talia looked at the access panel beside him. Open the trail. Gavin did not move. Elise heard the silence. Rourke, she said, open the trail. Commander, we have crew outside. This is not the time to indulge in internal accusation. No, Talia said. This is exactly when people like you write the accusation. Mason's voice broke through the calm. Can someone tell me if the door is opening? The question cut through everyone more sharply than the alarm. Talia looked at the 3 white suits waiting against the hull. Riley had stopped joking. Soren braced one hand on the rail. Mason's helmet light trembled against the hatch window. They had laughed at her. That fact still existed. It just no longer mattered enough to hate. Elise, Talia said, dropping the commander's title without realizing it, the standard reset will keep failing because the system thinks the latch is between states. If Gavin keeps forcing it, the lockout will harden. Gavin's face flushed. You do not know that. I have seen this failure. Elise stepped closer. Where? In the sealed ground simulation. Gavin's hand curled against the console edge. Outside, Mason said, very quietly. The one she warned us about? Talia kept her voice low and exact. I need live authority over the latch diagnostic tree, access to the old override branch, and Nora on secondary timing. Gavin almost laughed, but fear stopped it. You give her that, and she can destroy the airlock. No, Talia said. If we keep pretending this is procedure, the airlock will do that by itself. Elise made the decision. Transfer control to Technician Wren. Gavin turned toward her. Commander. Now. Nora routed secondary timing to Talia's station. Gavin stood there one moment longer, surrounded by the authority he had used so well. Then he stepped aside. Talia placed both hands on the console. Outside the ship, Mason had 17 minutes of safe air left. Talia did not sit. There was no time to make the moment look official. She pulled the diagnostic tree onto the main console and split the screen into 3 panes: live latch state, secondary timing, and archived override branches. The ship resisted her immediately, current procedure only. Of course, she whispered. Nora slid into the secondary station. I can mirror timing drift from here. Good, do not correct it, just call it. Gavin stood behind them, too close to be helpful. The current procedure exists for a reason. Talia kept working. The current procedure assumes the latch knows whether it is open or closed. And your solution is to use a dead branch from an old simulation? My solution is to ask the airlock a smaller question. Elise came to the edge of the console. Explain. Talia enlarged the schematic. The system is rejecting reset because the full latch assembly is reporting a contradiction. If we ask it to reset the whole door, it protects occupancy and refuses. But there is an old diagnostic branch that pulls the outer latch pin by pin instead of treating it as one assembly. Nora looked at the screen. That branch was removed from the active manual. Not removed, Talia said. Buried. Gavin gave a sharp breath. Because it is unstable. Because it embarrassed the launch review. The words left the console bay colder than any alarm. Elise turned toward Gavin. Is that true? We are not doing this now, he said. Outside, Mason's breathing came through the comm, uneven and close. Talia, he said, my suit says 16 minutes. Talia touched the channel. I know. Slow your breathing. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Do not look down at Earth. Look at the hatch frame. I am looking at it. It is very closed. Then keep looking. I am going to make it answer. Riley's voice cut in, thinner than before. Can she actually do that? No one answered quickly enough. Talia opened the old branch again. Manual override delta access requires valid authorization code. A blank field appeared. Gavin leaned forward. There is no valid code in the current system. There is, Talia said. Then it would be in the procedure. It was in the failure report. Elisa's eyes sharpened. The sealed simulation. Talia nodded once. Gavin laughed under his breath, but the sound had lost its power. She is guessing from a training accident. Talia finally looked at him. No, I wrote the recovery note after that accident. The console bay tightened around the sentence. Nora stared at her. Mason's breath caught over the comm. Talia wished the reveal felt like vindication. It did not. It felt like opening a wound in front of people who had mistaken the bandage for privilege. I was 23, she said. 2 trainees were locked in the ground chamber because the latch answered late and the system believed its own bad state. I found the pattern after the first failed reset. I wrote the note that kept the chamber from being scrapped as operator error. Elise said quietly, "That report was the reason your name came to the selection board." "Yes." Gavin's face changed. "Calculation. You were added late because the board panicked," he said. "That does not make you flight lead." "No," Talia said. "The 3 people outside make this about something other than your title." Nora's voice shook. 15 minutes. Talia turned back to the code field. She remembered the old chamber. A trainee pounding once on the inner window, senior engineers arguing over pressure math while a small line of latency kept repeating on her screen. She had written the recovery branch in pencil first, because no one had given her access to the official terminal. Pull the latch pins separately. Ignore assembly state. Confirm mechanical truth before command truth. The code had been made from the simulation identifier and the recovery sequence. Delta Nelia Sata Nelia Kumentayuxi pin 7. Her fingers hovered. Gavin saw the hesitation and seized it. If she enters that wrong, the system can hardlock the assembly. Talia did not deny it. Elise asked, "Is that possible?" "Yes," Talia said. "If the code is wrong, or if the pin response is too corrupted, we may lose manual control until a full reboot." "How long for reboot?" 42 minutes. Outside, Riley whispered. "We do not have 42 minutes. "No," Talia said. "You do not." The truth did not need softening. Softening had helped get them here. Elise looked at Talia as a person deciding whether to trust another person's hands. "Can you do it?" Talia thought of the corrections she had swallowed, the orange badge turned into a joke, and Elise telling her to get enough. Now enough was not a file. It was a choice. "Yes," she said. "But I need Gavin off my console." Gavin stepped forward. "Commander." Elise did not raise her voice. "Stand back." He did not move. Then Mason spoke from outside the ship. "Rourke," he said, breathing hard, "move." Gavin's eyes flicked to the comm panel. It was the first crack in his command. He stepped back. Nora began calling timing drift. Outer latch pin channel unstable. 12% variance. 14 minutes. Talia entered the code. Delta Nelia Sata Nelia Kumentaxi pin 7. The console held still. Then a new branch opened, thin and old and almost forgotten beneath the polished interface. Manual pin pull available. Gavin stared at the screen as if the ship had chosen her in front of him. "Do not celebrate," she said. She opened the poll. One by one, the latch pins answered. Pin 1, secure. Pin 2, secure. Pin 3, secure. Pin 4, delayed. Pin 5, secure. Pin 6, unknown. Pin 7, misaligned. There was the truth. Not in Gavin's report. Not in the green boxes. Not in the rumor that had followed her through every corridor. In 7 tiny mechanical answers, the airlock finally told the room what Talia had been trying to say all along. "It is not sealed wrong," she said. "It is reading wrong." Elise stepped closer. "Can we open it?" Talia looked at the oxygen timer. 13 minutes. "We can," she said. "But Mason has to help from outside." Mason did not answer right away. On the hull camera, his white suit looked too small against the dark curve of space. One hand held the airlock rail, the other hovered near the external service panel. "Mason," Talia said, "open the manual panel below the hatch frame." "I see 3 panels. Left side. Under the yellow caution stripe. Recessed handle." His helmet light swept across the metal. "Found it. Pull it toward you and rotate counterclockwise." Riley cut in. Why is he doing this? I am closer to the hinge. Because Mason's suit camera has the clearer angle, Talia said. And his tether is not crossing the latch path. That was only half the truth. The other half was that Mason was breathing too fast. Giving him a task might keep him alive. Nora called from secondary. 12 minutes. Gavin's voice came from behind Talia. If the panel is forced incorrectly, it can shear the manual pin. Elise answered before Talia could. Then do not distract the person preventing that. Mason gripped the handle and pulled. The panel did not move. It is stuck. It is pressure-seated, Talia said. Pull once, stop, then rotate. I am trying. I know. Match your breathing to the pull. 4 in. Hold. Pull on the exhale. Mason tried again. The panel shifted half an inch. Riley's camera jerked toward him. Come on, Mason. Do not crowd him, Talia said. Your elbow is blocking his light. Riley moved back. Mason pulled again. The panel opened with a sharp vibration through his suit microphone. Panel open. Talia brought up the manual pin map. 7 pin caps. Do not touch 1 through 5. Pin 6 is unknown. Pin 7 is misaligned. Check whether 7 is seated above or below the guide notch. They all look the same. Pin 7 has a scoring mark across the cap. I see it. Tell me where the mark is. Maybe upper right? Not maybe. His breathing spiked. I can't. Yes, you can. Put your thumb under the rail. Anchor your hand. Look again. The seconds moved across the oxygen timer. 11 minutes. The scoring mark is below the notch, Mason said. Good. The pin is mechanically safe, but reporting misaligned. Turn it 6 degrees clockwise. No more. Riley made a strained sound. 6 degrees? We are doing surgery on a door now? Riley, Soren said, voice tight. Let her work. That quiet sentence changed the bay more than an apology would have. Mason placed the manual driver over the pin. My hand is shaking. The tool can tolerate tremor. It cannot tolerate panic. A breath scraped through the comm, almost a laugh and almost a sob. You always talk like that? Only when people are outside my airlock. Then he turned the pin. Nora called, pin 7 shifting. 4 degrees. 5. 6. Stop, Talia said. The latch map updated. Pin 7, aligned. Now, pin 6, she said. Press the diagnostic contact beside it for 2 seconds. Gavin stepped forward. That contact was disabled. No, Talia said. It was hidden. Nora's voice came faster. 10 minutes. Mason pressed the contact. Nothing happened. Again? He asked. No. Hold. The screen flickered. Pin 6. Mechanical response present. Signal path corrupted. The airlock was not locked because it could not open. It was locked because the system had been taught not to trust its own hardware. Just like the crew had been taught not to trust her. Talia pushed that thought away. Commander, I can force a local truth state. Elise leaned in. Risk? If the pins hold, we get 1 opening cycle. If they do not, it freezes until reboot. Probability? 71%. Gavin scoffed. Based on what model? The one you did not apply the patch for. He stopped talking. Outside, Mason whispered, Talia. Yes. When you said it before we went out, I heard you. Her fingers paused above the command. The comm stayed open. The recording light remained active. I know, she said. I laughed. I know that too. I am sorry. There were things she could have said, things sharp enough to be deserved. But the timer read 8 minutes, and an apology was not oxygen. Then help me open the door, she said. Mason's voice steadied. Tell me what to do. Talia sent the force-state command to the ready queue. Mason, both hands on the rail. Riley and Soren, tether close but do not touch the hatch until I tell you. Nora, count latch vibration. Commander, Authorization on my mark. Elise placed her hand on the command seal. Ready. Talia watched 7 tiny indicators hold their fragile agreement. Mark. Elise authorized. Talia executed. The airlock shuddered. Mason's camera filled with red light, then white. The outer hatch moved 1 inch. Then stopped. Riley shouted, "It stopped." "Do not pull," Talia snapped. Riley froze. Pin 4, delayed but not failed, was waiting for the old sequence to complete. She entered the final pull manually. The hatch moved again. 6 inches. 1 foot. Enough. Mason, enter first. Soren, push Riley's pack. Riley, keep your arms in. Mason crossed the threshold with 3 minutes left. Soren followed. Riley came last, helmet scraping the frame as the hatch sealed behind him. The inner pressure cycle began. Inside the bay, no one celebrated. They watched oxygen indicators crawl upward while Talia kept both hands on the console until the last suit cleared vacuum status. Only then did Mason's voice come through the internal speaker, small. "She saved us." No one corrected him. The first thing Gavin did after the rescue was not check Mason's suit. He opened the incident report. Talia saw it from the main console while the EVA crew were still being unsealed. Riley's hands shook so badly that Soren had to release the neck ring for him. Mason sat on the restraint platform, breathing through a medical mask, eyes fixed on the airlock door. Nora kept her hands on the secondary console, though no one had asked her to keep working. Only Gavin looked busy in a way that had nothing to do with saving anyone. Incident classification, airlock control irregularity. He typed quickly. Primary contributing factor, unauthorized diagnostic interference by technician T. Wren during active EVA preparation. Talia read the line once. Then again. The words should have surprised her. They did not. Gavin had been preparing that sentence since the moment he downgraded her warning. "Stop," she said. He did not look over. "This report has to be filed within 22 minutes of crew recovery. You are lying in it. I am preserving a timeline. You are creating one." Commander Elise stepped between them. "Rourke, save the draft and step back." "It is already saving, Commander." Ship protocol requires immediate incident capture before memory drift contaminates witness statements. Memory drift. Talia almost laughed, but Gavin could wrap a falsehood in policy until it looked cleaner than truth. Mason pulled the mask from his face. "She did not cause it." Gavin turned just enough to acknowledge him. "You experienced hypoxia stress. Do not force yourself into a technical statement right now. I heard her before we went out." "You heard many things before you went out." Mason tried to stand. His knees failed halfway. Soren caught him by the arm. "Sit down," Soren said. "You are not cleared." Gavin used the moment. "You see," he said to Elise. "This is why we do not build the record from adrenaline." Talia felt the trap closing from another direction. He did not need to prove she was guilty. He only needed to make every voice defending her seem unstable. Nora's tablet chimed softly. She looked down. Talia saw her face drain. "What is it?" Talia asked. Nora shook her head once. Gavin's fingers moved across the report field. Timeline entry 1348. Technician Wren pushes unauthorized telemetry to EVA bay display. Timeline entry 1352. Rourke classifies observation non-critical. Timeline entry 14:6. Airlock fault occurs after unsanctioned diagnostic activity. Nora stared at that last line. Talia followed her eyes. The timestamp was wrong. At 14:6, the EVA crew had still been outside frame 7. The latch had missed response before the return request. Gavin was moving the fault later, placing it after Talia's visible objection. "Nora," Talia said quietly, "did he just change that?" Gavin stopped typing. The bay tightened. Riley looked down at his gloves. Soren's scanner continued its soft pulse against Mason's wrist. Elise turned toward the secondary station. Nora's mouth opened. No sound came. Gavin spoke before she could find one. Analyst Pike is monitoring recovery telemetry. Do not pressure junior staff into speculation. Junior staff. Talia knew that weapon too. Make the witness feel small. Make the truth feel above her clearance. Elise said, Pike. Nora looked from Gavin to Talia. Her voice came out thin. The fault marker should be earlier. Gavin's expression sharpened. Should be. Nora flinched. Talia stepped in before the word could collapse under him. The system recorded outer latch no response before return sequence. The report says the fault occurred after my display push. Gavin closed the report window. Not deleted. Not submitted. Closed. Enough, he said. We have survivors, an unstable airlock, and a junior technician trying to put me on trial because she finally received the attention she wanted. The sentence hit the bay differently now. Riley did not laugh. Mason lifted his head. Nora looked at the floor. Elise's jaw set. A small countdown appeared on the incident panel. Auto-submit to mission control. 21:43. Gavin had not closed the trap. He had armed it. Talia looked at the timer, then at the dirty orange badge still clipped to her chest. For the first time since the hatch opened, fear found its way through her hands. Not fear of space. Fear that she could save people from vacuum and still lose the truth, inside a report no one questioned quickly enough. Mason found Talia outside the medical alcove 9 minutes after the auto-submit timer appeared. He had a thermal blanket over his shoulders and adhesive sensors fixed along his jaw. Every few steps, he stopped as if his body had not decided whether the ship was solid yet. Talia was at a side terminal, trying to open the maintenance access trail through a pathway Gavin had not closed. You should be lying down, she said. I tried. That is not the same as being cleared. I do not want to be cleared by the same man writing that report. Talia looked at him then. Mason's face had lost the easy confidence he wore before the EVA. Without the helmet and the crowd, he looked younger and more ashamed. I need to know, he said. Did he know before we went out? Talia opened the latch history, but stopped before showing him. What will you do with the answer? He flinched slightly. That is fair. No, she said. It is necessary. I laughed because everyone else did, Mason said. That sounds small now. It was small then. He accepted that without defending himself. Talia turned the screen toward him. The access trail loaded in fragments. Gavin's name appeared at 1341, opening firmware patch 7, 3B. At 1343, he marked the advisory reviewed. At 1344, he removed Talia from the pre-EVA review. At 1352, he downgraded the latch warning. Mason read each line. His throat moved. He knew the patch was tied to the latch. He knew enough to slow down, Talia said. Mason touched the console edge as if balance had left him again. And he is saying you caused it. He is saying what protects him. Behind them, Nora entered the corridor with a tablet held against her chest. I copied the timestamp before he changed it, she said. Both of them turned. Nora's voice shook, but she kept going. The fault marker was first logged before return sequence. The draft report places it after Talia's display push. I have the autosave comparison. Talia felt something in her chest loosen, the first shape of a door. Why did you come here? She asked. Nora looked down. Because if I wait until I am not scared, the report will already be gone. Mason exhaled once, hard. Then Gavin's voice came from the corridor entrance. That is an interesting gathering. He stood with his hands behind his back, composed again, the way he had looked before the hatch locked. Mason, medical ordered you to rest. Mason straightened. Medical did not order me to lie. Gavin's eyes narrowed by a fraction. Nora, he said, you are mishandling incident data. I copied an autosave. Without authorization. Before you changed it. He stepped closer. You are a junior analyst on your first deep orbit mission. Be careful about attaching yourself to emotional interpretations you cannot defend under review. Nora's fingers tightened around the tablet. Talia knew that tone. It did not sound like a threat to anyone who wanted not to hear one. Mason moved between Gavin and Nora. I can defend it, he said. You were oxygen-stressed. I was conscious. You were afraid. Yes, Mason said. That is why I remember who was trying to help. Gavin looked past him to Talia. You are turning survivors into witnesses before they have recovered. No, Talia said. You turned them into cover before they were safe. For the first time, Gavin's control cracked in public. You think being right about one latch makes you fit to judge command decisions? Talia did not answer quickly. The old version of her would have reached for another file, another number, another proof. But this moment was not only about data. It was about whether people who had seen the truth would let rank rename it. The auto-submit timer chimed from Nora's tablet. 9 minutes. Mason looked at the countdown. Then he took the tablet from Nora, not to steal her evidence, but to stand beside it. Open the full mission record, he said. Gavin's mouth tightened. You do not have authority. No, Mason said, but Commander Elise does. And I am going to tell her what I heard before we went outside. Nora lifted her tablet. And I am going to show her what you changed. Gavin stood in the corridor with 2 junior crew members and the woman he had tried to bury. For the first time since the rumor began, Talia was not standing alone. The timer kept counting down. Commander Elise did not call it a hearing. On a ship, names mattered. A hearing sounded political. An emergency review sounded like something no one could avoid. She brought them to the command bay with 7 minutes left on the auto-submit timer. Gavin's incident report glowed on the central wall beneath the Odyssey crest. Mason stood by the medical rail with a blanket around his shoulders. Nora held her tablet. Riley stayed beside Soren, pale and quiet. Talia stood under the airlock status display. Her orange badge was scratched from the rescue, one corner bent against her suit. For once, no one looked at it first. Elise faced Gavin. State your report. Gavin stepped forward. At 1348, Technician Wren inserted unauthorized telemetry into active EVA preparation. At 1352, I classified her observation as non-critical, consistent with operational tolerance. At 1406, airlock irregularity occurred following her unsanctioned interference. Technician Wren later used an obsolete manual branch to recover the crew. The recovery was effective, but the initiating conduct remains under review. The words were smooth enough to pass through a boardroom. They made Talia sound reckless and useful in the same breath. Elise asked, Is that your final statement before submission? Yes. Then we open the mission record. Gavin's jaw tightened. Commander, that access level requires cause. 3 crew members were trapped outside my ship. That does not authorize sealed pre-launch material. It does when the same failure signature appears in flight. Elise placed her palm on the command seal. The incident draft slid aside. A timeline unfolded from ship telemetry, comm audio, access logs, and diagnostics. Wave 1 had been Gavin's lie. The ship began the answer. 1336 outer latch 2 delayed response, 0.84 seconds. 1341 firmware patch, 7, 3B, opened by G. Rourke. 1343 patch marked reviewed. 1344T. Wren removed from pre-EVA review. 1352 warning classified non-critical. 142 outer latch, 2 no response. 146 return sequence command initiated by G. Rourke. The timestamp Gavin had used sat in the wrong place like a forged signature. Nora raised her tablet. I have the autosave comparison. Her voice trembled, but the file transferred cleanly. Original fault marker, 14.2. Edited fault marker, 14.6. Edited by G. Rourke. Gavin turned toward her. That file was never validated. It was auto-saved by the incident system, Nora said. I copied it before you closed the window. You do not have authority to interpret metadata. No, she said. But I can read a timestamp. Elise opened the EVA.com record. Talia's voice filled the bay. For the mission record, I am stating that outer latch 2 is answering late by 0.84 seconds across repeated cycles. Firmware patch 7.3b has not been applied, and I recommend delaying EVA until a full pressure recycle is complete. Then Gavin's voice followed. Remove Technician Wren from active EVA prep. The recording caught the thin metallic laughter from the suits. Mason lowered his head. Riley stared at the floor. Gavin's face hardened. She disrupted the crew before a dangerous operation. She warned the crew, Elise said. She lacked authority. She had data. That is not the same thing. No, Talia said. On this ship, that has been the problem. Gavin turned on her. You were added late because a frightened board needed insurance. You walked onto my EVA deck with sealed credentials and expected trust you never earned. Talia felt the old wound open, but she did not cover it with another number. I did not expect trust, she said. I expected the warning to be tested. Elise opened the sealed simulation file. Ground simulation failure, EVA, latch, Delta, 441. Recovery, note author, T. Wren. Cause, delayed latch response misclassified as operational tolerance. Recommended mitigation, firmware patch 7. 3. Be before external operations. The words stayed on the wall long enough to become heavier than Gavin's rank. Elise looked at him. Now everyone knows why she was here. Mason stepped away from the medical rail. Soren reached to stop him, but Mason shook his head. No. I need to say it standing. His voice was rough, but it carried. She warned us before we cycled the lock. I laughed at her. Riley laughed. I heard Gavin tell her to log it non-critical. We went out because we trusted the man with rank more than the woman with the numbers. Riley closed his eyes. When the door would not open, Mason continued, she talked me through every step. If this record says she caused the accident, then the record is a lie. Nora lifted her tablet beside him. And if it says Gavin did not alter the timeline, that is a lie too. The auto-submit timer reached 30 seconds. Elise tapped one command. Submission, halted command review, active. The countdown vanished. Gavin looked at the empty space where it had been. For the first time, there was no procedure left for him to hide inside. Elise faced him. Senior access suspended pending mission control investigation. You will not touch the airlock system, the incident report, or any witness record. Gavin's mouth opened, then closed. Talia waited for satisfaction to come. It did not. There was only exhaustion, and the sight of 3 people alive because the truth had arrived barely in time. The investigation did not end in the command bay. Nothing that serious ended neatly. Mission Control acknowledged the halted report, opened a formal review, and ordered Gavin Rourke removed from all EVA system authority until the record could be audited from Earth. He left the bay without looking at Talia. Not because he had no words, but because every useful word had already failed him. Riley approached her once, then stopped before he reached the console. I don't know what to say, he admitted. Talia looked at the airlock display, where the latch system now sat in maintenance lockout. Then don't make it about saying something. He nodded, ashamed enough not to ask for comfort. Mason remained near the medical rail. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear. I should have listened, he said. Yes, Talia answered. The honesty hurt him. It also let him keep standing. Commander Elise waited until the bay had thinned before she spoke. I was wrong about you too. Talia turned. Elise did not soften the sentence with rank or procedure. When the board added you late, I thought they were handing me a problem. A young specialist with sealed credentials, no flight history, and too much attention around her name. They did hand you a problem, Talia said. Just not the one people kept naming. Elise accepted that. Then she sent a command to the mission roster. Talia's wrist display chimed. Crew role updated. Talia Wren, lead airlock recovery specialist. Elise added one more order before closing the file. From now on, technical warnings are reviewed by data threshold, not by seniority of the person who raises them. No one argued. For a long moment, Talia did not touch the badge clipped to her chest. The orange card was scratched, bent at one corner, and stained with a dark mark from the service console. Earlier that day, it had been a joke people could point at. A piece of plastic made heavier by every whisper attached to it. Now it felt almost too light. Nora came to her side and placed a small data chip on the console. The original autosave, she said, in case anyone tries to clean the record again. Talia closed her fingers around it. Thank you. Across the bay, Mason watched her straighten the damaged badge. He looked at the words, really looked this time. Then he said, quietly, I should have read it the first time. Talia did not answer with forgiveness. Not with words. She turned toward the airlock, where the red warning lights had gone dark and the hatch waited under repair clamps. The ship would fly again. It would still creak, delay, misread, and ask for human attention in ways no checklist could fully predict. The ship still needed listening to. So she walked back to the console, clipped the orange badge flat against her chest, and began with the smallest sound in the system.